We were in it for like building something big and that it would take time. But man, that time felt like it was dragging on and going so slow. Like it was brutal. It was painful. And
it was literally one step forward, 4 steps backwards. And we're so far in the hole.
It felt like that for years. And we were like sleeping on floors, on air mattress. I could give you a tutorial on how to like roll yourself off of an air mattress at 9 months pregnant.
Hello, welcome back to our podcast, Better Together. You know why we call it Better Together?
Why?
Because it is better together.
We are better
This
together.
podcast would suck just by ourselves.
Yeah, it really would.
This is way more fun together.
It is more fun.
So today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about our why. We love Simon Sinek. We're going to talk about the myth of overnight success briefly, and maybe some of the signs and clues that I was an entrepreneur, because people are going to see that in their kids and be like, such annoying tendencies. But if you know what they are, maybe you're going to help guide them towards the right courses and you can really help them take a step in that direction. But I really want to talk about the biggest mistake that I made as a business owner.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. And I'm really excited to hear about the making of the entrepreneur that is Jobin Barkie. I think that
straight from the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah, we've got, I'm sure many more episodes where we will talk about the entrepreneurial life, the entrepreneurial journey, but you are the quintessential entrepreneur. And so I want to hear about when that started and what that looked like for you, when you
lifelong
realized that.
And unapologetic.
Let's get into it. I want to hear all the stories, all the nitty gritty, and let's, really get down to the nuts and bolts on, lessons learned, mistakes made, and hopefully provide some valuable experience shares for our listeners. You've lived an entrepreneurial life your whole life. You've never
46 years.
Yeah, you've never had like a quote unquote real job, right?
Yeah. I've always been compensated for results versus time.
Correct. I've never seen you put on a suit, get a briefcase, go to a job, sit in a cubicle, work 9 to 5. And I've known you for 20 years. I don't think you did that before you met me.
I like being in positions where your hustle and your outcomes impact. So that's my sweet spot. That's my only spot.
So you are the quintessential entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think I'm wired to be more comfortable in uncomfortable situations than most people are. Much less comfortable in comfortable situations, or as that would be defined by other people. For me, it's boring, slow, uneventful, very uncomfortable.
For other people, it could be that low risk, predictability, stability is what works for them. It's good for them. But for you, it's not.
It's understanding your wiring, your nature, your nurture, and then your choices, right?
Okay, so tell me about that.
Oh, I would love to. You and I believe we're all a product of nature, nurture, and choice. Nature being our biological hardwiring, nurture being life events that happen to us that help shape and mold who we become. And our power is in the choice side. That's where we hold control over who we become.
Wake up every day. You can choose to wake up on the wrong side of the bed, the right side of the bed, right?
Yeah.
And
it doesn't go well when I get up on the wrong side of the bed because I have to crawl across you and then roll off. That never starts the day well.
Makes my day go very poorly.
Which
from there
impacts
on out
my
too.
day.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so, we're partners in business, in life, parenting, and love. We've been doing this together for 20 years. And this thing is living our ideal entrepreneurial life. Hasn't always been easy.
No.
And, we have overcome a lot. And we've owned a business together for over 15 years. Let's talk about what it's like to start up a business, own a business, run a business, be an entrepreneur. That 15 years is significant to run a business, right? Most businesses fail within the first 5 years.
First 2 to 3 years, most are gone. Huge percentage gone within 5 years. Tripling the 5-year mark is significant.
Right. And I'd love for you to share kind of like high level, what is the story there, that 15-year journey of entrepreneurship?
Well, my journey is a lot longer than 15 years.
Okay.
Our journey is about 15 years of entrepreneurship.
Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I was raised in the Amazon rainforest. If you don't know what an entrepreneur is, it gets misunderstood as the exact opposite of who you are, which is lazy. It's like, oh, he's always trying to cut corners. Why can't he just do it the way we've always done it? That is fingernails on a chalkboard, the way we've always done it, as being the only reason to continue doing it, right? But so an entrepreneur is often that kid that's just like, why don't you just do it how we told you how to do it? They do it a harder way. They do it a worse way. They do it a longer way. And all of a sudden, one attempt is way better than all the other ones they did.
And why is that? Why do they do it that way? Because we
low-
have a kid. We have a kid. We have 5 children. They're all very different. One of them is like you.
Yeah. I think it's confidence in your ability to create something. It's like, well, somebody else created this way. Why is that the only and best way? Like, we've been doing this for so long. We don't believe that between us we can come up with another faster, more efficient, more profitable way to do this. And so your brain works like that. And most people do not think that way.
Okay.
And so when you're constantly trying to tweak and change things, it often is not better. You just find the better way, right? Okay. I love the overnight success. It's like, okay, they probably got it wrong a bunch of times before the overnight success. Right. Steve Carell, the actor, he was like in his 40s when people were like, overnight success, hits Hollywood running. He's like, I've been doing this for 20 years.
It's just that The Office was that thing.
Yeah. The show came out and then boom. It's like, oh, this is a super funny guy. He's got a certain lane that he's going to just own. Like, man, overnight. Never heard of him yesterday. Look at today. Everyone in America knows him, right? Except he'd been doing it for 20 years and had got no recognition, no awards, no opportunities.
And what did he say? It was you and I talk about, we referenced this, and it was in an interview, right? And he said, the interviewer was like, wow, how does it feel to be an overnight success? And he said, yeah, it feels great to be a 20-year overnight success, something like that. And I think that really resonated with you and I because, like, it's not how it works.
Yeah. So I think what carries you through all that challenge, the stuff people don't see, is being really secure and confident in your why. Why are you doing this? Like, did you start a soccer company so that you could teach 3-year-olds to kick a soccer ball straight? That's not fulfilling for long. There has to be more. We have a children's soccer company. And we say that with our coaches. Even our coaches, we hire them. It's not going to carry you for very long if you're here to teach a 3-year-old to kick a ball straight. That's rewarding for a bit. But the why behind what you do, right? Simon Sinek has a great TED Talk. Check it out. Great 18-minute TED Talk about knowing your why. And he says all of us know our what, right? You just close your eyes and you think back, like, what did I do in the last 24 hours? That's how we do it in a way that sets us apart from everyone else, is something that not too many people can articulate clearly or even maybe put their finger on. Knowing why you do something is the core of everything you're doing, the why behind it, and almost no one can articulate that quickly and easily.
I would argue that is what makes things sustainable. That's how you can retain what you're building longer. When you're just going through the motions, you're doing the what. I mean, that fizzles out like pretty quickly, but your why, and if you're really driven to like succeed because there's a deeper thing that's driving you, you're going to go further, faster, and there's going to be longevity there, right?
And for people wired like entrepreneurs looking for their thing, remember Irv Braun, he was in a mentorship role for me because he said to me, this is not going to work. This is not your thing, but you are going to be successful. You just have to find your thing. That's advice every entrepreneur should hear, because finding your thing is about identifying your why and then executing a how and a what around that why, right? And that sustains you.
Starts with why.
I think, that's the name of his book.
Not Irv's.
No, not Irv's.
Simon's.
So I think when you see an entrepreneur hopping, like they're like a stone skipping across a lake. It's just ding, 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 ding. It's always a new hustle, a new thing. They're trying to find a deep, meaningful connection to their what. You're much better served if you take a step outside of that and you think through why. You may have a specific skill set that kind of like guides you towards how you're going to execute, what you're going to do to live out your why. But knowing your why first makes everything else simple.
Yeah.
Not easy, but simple.
Right. That's really interesting. You're talking about skill set. I thought of 2 things just now. When I'm working with clients, I'm a business coach and I teach them tools to help them get more of what they want from their business. We start with why. We start with traction on day one. And then in day two, when we start answering the questions on
What is traction?
Traction is a book by Gino Wickman, and everything I teach is in this book. On day one with clients, we start with traction before vision. But then on the second day, and those are things like a great meeting pulse and goals. We call them rocks, 90-day priorities.
You're learning all the structure.
Execution stuff.
Yeah, all the execution stuff so that when you go and you
Layer
do get
it
to
with-
your why,
yes, yeah.
you're ready to run.
On day two with my clients, we answer these 8 questions on a vision traction organizer. It's this 2-page strategic planning document. And we start with, what are your core values? Because those are the core behaviors in your organization. It is your, why. Coupled with the second question is, what's your core focus, your purpose, cause, or passion, and your niche, your sweet spot. But that stuff is integral to your vision. It's the core of what you're doing, right? It's where the soul of your organization lives. I totally forgot the second thing
It's
was.
okay, because I was just going to comment that your eyes look really nice right now, and I've lost track of what you were saying, because I was just thinking like, oh man, her eyes look really nice in this light. We have a really nice light here that just, they're popping.
Thank you. Well, but I wanted to ask
Reset.
you, 15 years ago, we moved to the States from Canada to start our business. It's a children's soccer program for 2 to 8-year-olds, non-competitive, skills training, and character development. And we moved down here candidly because of health reasons.
Yep.
You were facing a health crisis. We had to make a decision, move to a warmer climate, get an indoor job. And we decided, since you're a dual citizen, to move down to California, start our business. So at that time, did you have this why? Did you have this deeper soul connection to the what?
I did. I hadn't gone through the Simon Sinek process of identifying it, writing it all down, but I had actually I've probably written 5 blog posts in my life. You can go Google them and find old blog posts. I probably wrote 5. One of them I wrote was success versus significance. Actually, I wrote this in 2008, 2007, but there was a car company called Success. That was the name of the company. It did not last very long. It wasn't very significant. It had no significant impact. My point was, when we focus on significance rather than success, we start to do things for the right reason, right? We start to think about impact and takeaways. How can I bless people, and how can I make other people's life better? And
So you're not talking about self-significance, like how significant am I, but the significance of what you're doing, the product or service that you're putting out into the world.
yeah, the significance of your organization, it does lead into the significance of your life. But I wrote an article about focusing on significance rather than on
Oh,
success.
we should dig that up.
Maybe not. Maybe.
Dig it up, put it through ChatGPT, re-release
Yeah,
it.
re-release it. Re-release coming soon. So I know I was wired to think about, how can I do something that I love, impact a lot of people in a positive way? The answer to that is rarely children's soccer, but it was the platform for my personal why and your personal why. We got to our own core values later in life, but we were already living them. A core value of helping first.
And that's what we say, when I teach core values, is the core values in your organization already exist in your organization. They're the core behaviors that already exist. And we pull them out. We define what those existing behaviors are, right? And those are your core values. So I look back in our life and I'm like, oh, for 100% for sure. We have our family core values defined now very clearly. And I look back even in the early days before we started our business, in our newlywed days, and these core values that we have clearly defined, we were living them out. They were core behaviors since day one.
They're decision-making filters. We were already making decisions through those filters. We just hadn't written them on a wall yet.
There is huge power in that. That's a significant, powerful thing to do. And
what, writing them down?
Yeah. Writing anything down.
Yeah.
And I think that you writing that blog post even is, that was significant and powerful, because when you have a thought in your mind and it comes down through your arm, out of your hand, out of a pen, onto a piece of paper, onto a computer screen, what have you, it puts it out into the world.
Yeah.
It's no longer this idea. It's real.
It's no longer abstract. It's concrete.
Right. Absolutely.
When you look at the entrepreneurial journey, I'm trying to go back to your original question. Was it like, how did the journey start?
Just
Or how
tell us
did I
about
know?
this, the last 15 years. What did that look like for you? Everyone's journey looks different.
So
Was
I'll
it?
go back to the original experience in Peru,
Mhm.
but I didn't know what it was. We had no way to make money except for once a year they'd have a conference where I lived where
So
people
you
would
grew
come.
up on a 1 square mile missionary base
Correct.
full of,
A couple hundred people living there, full of gringos.
okay, all expats.
Yep.
No local people.
Their local people were there every day.
Mhm.
They had jobs and worked on this missionary base.
And the people who were working there did not make money. They were supported by supporters in other parts of the world.
Yep. And they had all different jobs. Like there was, it starts with someone going down. The organization was called Wycliffe Bible Translators that my parents were with. And, obviously in the name of it, they're translating a Bible, but they're also translating math textbooks. They're translating basic health books and
were your
documents. It starts with that. Like somebody goes down, like, I'm gonna translate this, right? In an unwritten language. So first you have to create an alphabet that matches the sounds that they're making. Super challenging. Also, no computers, no chat GPT, no nothing. A typewriter. That's it. Like 2-finger typing.
And this started like a long time ago. Parents met in the jungle in the 70s.
Yeah. But it started before that even.
Right.
Like it was when I left in 96, we were pretty close to the 50-year mark of the base being there. There's no way to make money. Nobody's making money. So like my parents moved down as skilled people. They were both teachers. My dad also has a knack for business. And my mom has the kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, and my dad has the knack for the numbers and the business side
And
of it.
technology.
He pushed student access to technology. When we moved to North America, we wouldn't be clueless. We were in many ways, but we wouldn't be clueless about like even how to turn a computer on. And so I credit my dad for a lot of the fluency that a lot of us felt in the early years when we moved back. There were computers available. We knew how to create a Word document. I credit my dad with that. My mom also had this adventurous spirit. She used to always say, "Are we having fun yet?" We're in the middle of everything collapsing. And my mom was like, "Are we having fun yet?"
She often says, life is a musical. She has this like...
And bursts out in
yeah.
song. And the rest of us are like, okay.
She does have a very adventurous spirit.
Yeah. And together, it's this like, it's this couple that met and formed their relationship around this massive adventure. So I'm living on this missionary base. No one's making any money. There's no economy of transferring money and stuff. And so we get one window a year where there's a conference and everybody comes for conference. Everybody comes into town from the mission. They're translating, but they have kids, so they need a teacher. Okay, well, somebody's going to come and teach. So then it's the one classroom, 12 grades. And then it's like, well, maybe we need an elementary and a high school. Then it's elementary and a middle school. Then it's like, okay, maybe 6th and 7th should have their teacher, 5th and 6th theirs, 4th and 5th. So it grows. And it's like, okay, well, we need a little commissary here. We need a little a snack store, like a little food store, right? Okay, someone's got to run that. Now we need a computer department. Somebody's got to fix the computers or typewriters or whatever, right? It grows like that. It's a couple hundred people and then people all over the country come in for this conference. They held it on our base, the biggest location. At the morning break, we could sell. The only time we could make money all year was for this week at 10 o'clock. The kids, right? I started selling cinnamon buns the first day, and I was like, I was talking, all right, come on over, and people. Somebody said to me early on, "Oh no, sorry, the missus is only going to let me have one snack today," and he pats his stomach, right? So only allowed to buy one. I'm like, okay. So the next day I came back, and my cinnamon buns were 25 to 30% bigger than anyone else's because there'd be about 3 people selling each thing, right? So now mine are the biggest, and they're priced a tiny bit more. And now all these uncles coming through are like, oh, I can only get one. I'm going to get the bigger one. So they would buy mine. That year I'd sell out every day and charge the most, provided a premium product. The next year, I talked to my friend Daniel Ryan. Daniel, you make lemon squares, I'll make cinnamon buns, and we'll do a package deal. Our cinnamon buns are priced way above everyone else's. And everybody's like, huh? I'm like, oh, if you buy a cinnamon bun from me, then you get a free lemon square from Daniel. So I was creating package deals, right? Bundles, early bundling in the Amazon rainforest. So I did that year. Then the next year was my 11th grade year, and the senior class was always allowed to sell soda pop, whatever you call it. So they would always sell that. But Aunt Lori said you had to come to the meeting in order to sell that year because people were skipping it, right? So we get to the meeting and we're going around, and if you had sold
Why
something...
did you go? You were in 11th grade. Why did you go to the meeting?
because I was going to sell cinnamon buns.
Everyone selling went to the meeting.
Right.
But if
Had
the
to.
12th graders didn't go to the meeting.
No, if anyone didn't go, then you didn't get to
couldn't
sell.
Okay.
Right? So
Got
they
it.
had to come to the meeting, mandatory. So we go there, and if you sold something previously, then you got to sell it again.
Got it.
So it comes around, it goes to me, and Aunt Lori's like, click, click. She's like, and Jobin for cinnamon buns? And I was like, nope, I will be selling soda, pop. I'll be selling pop. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. The seniors sell pop, and it helps to pay for their senior class trip. So the seniors always sell pop every year. And I was like, okay. Also, you did say that if you didn't come to this meeting, you couldn't sell this year. And she was like, yes. And then I just panned around the room. I was like, I do not see any 12th graders here, so I will be selling pop. And she was like, you will be selling pop. Wrote my name down. And I'm like, my gosh, the game time. Everybody buys a snack and a drink. Mm-hmm. And the seniors every year had a monopoly on the drink, right?
Okay.
So I rope in Daniel again, and I'm like, okay, let's sell. So we go to the beer factory because the factory had started selling this apple flavored pop that kids love and grown-ups don't love. But it was only like 12 cents a bottle. Like, it was super inexpensive. It was almost a third of the price of all the other ones, the Coke branding. And so I got those, and then I charged more than what Cokes were costing because I was convenient. I was right there at the conference, right? And so people lined up, they'd come out, and they were ice cold, right? And so they're sitting right there. We're in the Amazon rainforest. It's super hot, and I have ice cold, sugary soda, apple flavored soda. And most of the adults were like, can I tell you something? Give you a little advice? I'm like, sure. From all these non-entrepreneurs. Give you a little bit of business advice? I'm like, yeah. If you had more flavors, you'd sell a lot more. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And then they'd go, and then I'd turn to Daniel, and I'd be like, do they know that we're selling out every day? Because we have a total monopoly on the soda, the pop. And so we would, I remember we did 7 cases the first day, and then we took that money and bought 12 cases. And so the second day we had 12 cases. That's quite a percentage increase in inventory. And we did not sell it all during the 15, 20 minute window. And so you had a rule, you could only sell during that time. So I went to Daniel, and I was like, okay, let's go to the dining hall, and they have a huge ice maker, and let's get a big red bucket of ice. We'll carry the bucket of ice over. And so we go do that. It's this little bucket. Picture kids bathing in a little bucket tub thing. That's what it was. No handles. Feels like our fingers are getting sliced by this plastic. And we carry it about a mile. Heavy ice. And I was a thin, small kid. We're carrying this thing, and we're just struggling. So huge, huge thing of ice. Now, the auditorium where they were all meeting had screen windows, and the trees surrounding it we pronounced them mongo trees. They were mango trees, right? And when those leaves fall, they're very crunchy and loud. And so some people be familiar with this, we did like the walls of Jericho, 7 laps around. We did several laps around this auditorium, just crunch, crunch as loud as we could. I'm stepping on every leaf I see, making loud crunch. And people are like, they're looking up, and then you see them whispering. Then the next row like looks up and looks out and sees us walking around. So then we went and just set up by a tree, and I put all these bottles in. They're just like, they're sweating. They're so cold, right? And they're just sitting there, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. And so we're just sitting there, and nothing happens. And I said to Daniel, I'm like, it just takes one person. So eventually 5 minutes go by or so. Somebody walks out. One of our uncles comes out. It's like, hey, are you selling this soda right now? And I was like, oh no, we're not selling. We only sell during snack time at 10:15. So we're selling tomorrow. But it's pretty hot. I'm like, if you want to take one right now and just write your name on here, I'll charge you tomorrow when we're allowed to sell them, and you could just drink it today. And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. So he took one, goes back inside, has a cold, glistening bottle, chugging it as he's walking back through, and everybody's seeing this, right? And there's overhead fans slowly rotating, people just sitting there uncomfortable, and one person walks in with this ice cold soda, right? Well, there's a line soon after that, right? So I take full credit for starting the first credit system on the missionary base where people could buy before they paid, and no interest. And I didn't even realize I was doing that, right? and then move back to North America, and years later look back and be like, oh, I was definitely thinking like a little entrepreneur. And I think most entrepreneurs like myself that are just wired this way, we've all got little stories of little hustles, little breaking the rules. Our own kids did it. Our own kids, most of them have sold candy at school under the table, literally under the table. And one of them, when they started doing it, one of them told me, like, I don't know if we're allowed to do this at the school. I'm like, yeah, that's why you do it under the table. And so
we're like big ask for permission, not
no.
Oh no, sorry. Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
So we told them, you're never going to get in trouble for practicing your entrepreneurial skill set.
Right.
And so we might have to like publicly say, no, you can't do that. But really we're like giving you a little pat on the back afterwards. So
man,
yeah, if you're getting in trouble for flipping a bag of individually wrapped candies for $6, flipping that into a $20 gain, that's a huge win, and you've learned a life lesson that I don't think the school's teaching you. So when they get you in trouble, just say, oh, okay, yeah, okay, no problem. And then don't break the rule after that.
Right,
but if you don't ask and it's not posted anywhere, then just go for it. And so we have kids that are like, they're being informed at a young age, like, hey, this little trait you have, this is actually entrepreneurship. And we're giving a name to it. Didn't have that.
Modeled for you. You didn't have that encouraged. You didn't have that spirit sort of like developed.
Even though I think my parents together could have been entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
That just wasn't something that was recognized. It also wasn't cool or common or like it is today, right?
Cards.
Right.
Okay, so fast forward, you move to North America, you go to university, you do a bunch of entrepreneurial type of things, like you were a tree planter, you work
running crews, running camps,
totally. So
running you.
Excuse you?
I was your boss.
Okay. We use the word boss loosely here.
No, I was your boss. I had 18 crew members under me, and you were one.
You were my boss. That was the best and worst premarital counseling that we could have ever invested in. But
summer in the bush.
I think that's a story for another day. Anyway, so in regards to your entrepreneurial journey, you recognized early on, or now you can look back and see, like, you have always been an entrepreneur, and that led you to buying a Soccer Shots franchise.
Yep.
So that's been our business for the last 15 years that we have poured all of
with
our
a verbal handshake over the phone.
We poured all of our blood, sweat, and tears into that. It's been an incredible experience, a wild ride, a roller coaster. Tell me about owning your Soccer Shots business for the last 15 years and what that's looked like for you. I want to know, we know, it all starts with why, and that why has always been in you, and it's carried you through, and it still is your, the core of why you do what you do today. But talk to me about sacrifice, about what type of sacrifices that we've had to make, that you've had to make. What type of things were you willing to sacrifice? What type of things were you not willing to sacrifice on this journey?
I was willing to sacrifice time for a specific amount of time.
Okay.
Right? So I said, okay, I initially said 5 years. Our youngest, our firstborn had just been born. So our firstborn is not our oldest because we adopted our oldest later.
So our firstborn child was about 6 months old.
He was about 6 months old when you moved down. He was not born yet when we bought the business.
Right.
And so...
Okay, so let's talk about that sacrifice. Like, we bought the business, like you said, handshake deal. It was like
verbal
New Year's
handshake
Eve
over the phone.
Of 2008.
Yeah. Prices were going up the next day, and I called one of the founders, Jeremy, and I was like, verbal handshake over the phone. I want to buy 2 franchises for today's pricing, not tomorrow's pricing.
This is bad. Let's just set the tone here. Like, we bought our Soccer Shots franchise way in the early stages of franchise development back in the day in the Wild Wild West. We're old doggies in this system.
It was a logo and a good luck high five.
Right. So when you buy a Soccer Shots franchise today, if you're interested, go check it out. It's a great franchise to own, but this is not how it works.
No.
And you don't get what we got.
No.
You get significantly more, but you pay significantly more.
Yeah. And I said, I have Canadian dollars. Can I wait to pay and kind of play the exchange rate? And they said, no problem. They were still in proof of concept stage. Like, they wanted good franchisees to take this and show people what can be done.
Work, yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, go for it.
Cool.
Fast forward like 8 months and I get a call and it's like, hey, do you think we could set up maybe like a payment plan so we could start making these payments? Because I mean, I've been paying royalty, which is a percentage of the revenue coming in, but I hadn't paid for the franchises yet. And so essentially I actually paid for the franchises with the franchise by running it.
Smart.
Thank you. Something you can't do today,
Right.
but also you got a lot more support today.
Absolutely.
And so you hit the ground running and you generate revenue a lot faster.
And I want to note, we bought our franchise when we were both living in Canada.
Yep.
We were in another country. We bought a business located in another country
Yep.
that neither of us had lived in. You lived
No connections, contacts,
in
no
South America your
nothing.
whole life growing up. I lived in Canada my whole life. We met and married in Canada. We bought this business based in America. You're a dual citizen, so we moved down here.
Yeah, I came down first to get it going.
You really should start an immigration process before you move to that country, but we did it in an odd way, like we do most
10
things.
quick start.
Yeah. You moved down here. I couldn't move down here because we were in that process, and I was in the process of obtaining my green card. And we did so as well for our firstborn child. And so he and I lived in Canada for about 6 months while you moved down here and started building the business. So that was a huge sacrifice.
Yeah. I was willing to give up time. That's an example of time away from you guys. And I was a very involved dad right out I was dealing with poop issues, and he had issues.
Okay.
And I was like
TMI.
hands-on.
You were hands-on. And we also, we can talk about this in another episode, but we worked really hard to have this kid. We experienced infertility issues, multiple miscarriages. And so
it's like finally, and I leave right away.
Right. This was a long time coming, and you were very hands-on, and then you had to make this huge sacrifice.
I knew that we could create a better life for them.
Yeah.
By being entrepreneurs, if we were successful. But so I said 5 years initially. I'm like, okay, I can give up all the stuff that they're not going to really remember, 'cause we had a second one shortly after our first one. So I'm like, I can miss the preschool graduation ceremony. I can miss that, right? It's going to suck, but going into kindergarten, first grade, that's when they're going to remember and notice when I'm not really around, right? When they're adults, they don't really remember if I was there.
You don't remember much before the age of 5.
Yeah, I didn't think they'd remember if I was at a dance or something when they were 3.
Right.
I didn't think I'd remember that. I didn't think they'd even remember that they did a dance when they were 3.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so during this time, I'm willing to give up the things I want to do so that when the business takes off and I've invested all this time, I'm going to get that back. So I'm going to be the only dad that's at the 9:30 a.m. school play. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to sit there. I just did one recently. It's a 2-hour
walk through the revolution.
It's like a 2-hour. Oh my gosh. And my kid
was like 4 hours.
Well, my kid had a total of maybe 8 minutes of it. And I was like,
but you were one of the only dads there.
I was one of the only dads there. Yep.
And we did sacrifice, in those early days, we had colleagues, I guess you could call them, other franchise owners in other parts of the country who bought their franchises around the same time as us. And I remember specifically, like, you went to someone's house in another state and you came
in
home
Texas.
and
I
you
was
were
like, oh my gosh.
Man, he's living in this huge house and he's taking an actual salary, and like their business, we could do this, and we couldn't. Like it was
just a harder market.
We do believe that time is a currency, right? And so for us, like, we were willing to sacrifice, that time and those luxuries so that we could live the life that we're living now.
And part of that is the location. So we knew we wanted a specific weather because of the health stuff I was going through, but also outdoor living is part of our equation for quality of life. And not just outdoor living like I go on hikes. Outdoor living like I sit in my backyard comfortably without bugs all over me, without just soaked through with sweat because of the humidity. And so that was how we chose where we wanted to go. And so we got there, and it was a way more competitive market than we understood.
Well, let's just say, like, you and I had never really spent much time in Orange County, California.
No.
What we knew about Orange County was like whatever we had seen on TV, and we had watched The Hills and The OC, and we were like, cool,
Throwback.
That's what life is going to be like.
Can't wait to
Let's
stay in some
go.
rich person's pool house.
It did not work out that
No.
way for us. I remember driving our Honda Civic. We started like, you know that song, like, started from the bottom, now you're here. Like, that is our theme song, I think.
Yeah.
And we really we packed everything in the back of our Honda Civic.
Which was a super cool car in the small town we were coming from. It had a little spoiler and a sunroof.
It was great.
Tinted windows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rims. Didn't have spinning rims. Remember Pimp My Ride?
Spinners.
I regret.
Was that
we
Exhibit?
didn't get
Pimp
we didn't
My
get those
Ride.
spinning rims, but it was a really nice car in the small town we were at. And I remember when it
Like
was
all the college kids liked it.
Right.
It was like a cool car.
when it was time for our son and I to move down here, you came back up and we loaded the possessions that we had in the back of our Honda Civic, and we drove that thing down here. And I remember parking between two Bentleys at
Yeah.
the Starbucks and being like,
And Newport Beach and being like,
the
what
heck
are
did
we doing?
Because we were like,
This is a different economy than we're used to.
we knew that we were in it for like building something big and that it would take time. But man, that time felt like it was dragging on and going so slow. Like it was brutal. It was painful. And
It was literally one step forward, 4 steps backwards. And we're so far in the hole.
it felt like that for
Yeah.
years. And we were like sleeping on floors, on air mattress. I could give you a tutorial on how to like roll yourself off of an air mattress at 9 months pregnant. Like it was
How to use WIC the best. How to get WIC is food stamps. So
how to meal plan
maximize
using your,
Amanda was
your-
she said in another episode how much she loves lists. She would make these lists and use food stamps to meal plan, and
I
it
could
was
tell
it was,
you how to make beans and rice in 100 different ways. Like we really like bootstrapped. We
Yeah.
did, and we knew we were in it for that. But I don't think I
part
think
of that
it's
was because we were building an organization, not a job, and it's more expensive to build an organization.
okay.
Because you need to figure out retention. It's hard to build an organization when you can't retain employees, and in an industry with a high turnover, that became a big challenge that
Okay, so
wasn't going to pay off for a while.
Talk about that, because I want to highlight that for a second. We are in an industry where turnover looks like what?
6 to 9 months for entry level coaches.
So the demographic of coaches typically that a Soccer Shots owner in any part of the country will hire is like 18 to 24-year-olds, right?
Yep, college
Sometimes
age.
outside of that, but like most of the time that's the demographic that we're hiring. And they come and go, and there's no secret that Soccer Shots is not like necessarily their career choice or the career move that they're
It's not the
making
career
here.
they're
It's-
going to college for.
Right. So it's typically a job that they have that works really well with their school schedule
Yeah.
while they're going to college.
It's flexible.
But they'll typically stay with us for 1, 2, 3 seasons sometimes.
So 6 months is about 2-ish seasons. 9 months would be 3 seasons. We just took the approach and we talked about it. We said, hey, let's look at this organization from an entry level prospective
And we're
employee
not going to
position.
pretend this is just like not a thing. It's not happening, right? Like that they're just like that this. Yeah, I think that we like hear that this is an issue every year, but it's like, are
Well,
we
we-
talking about it with your employees? Are you bringing it out into the light and like trying
Well, what
to
we said
see how we
was-
can support?
What we said was we're going to look at this from an entry level perspective, and we're going to create a job that we wish we could have had.
Right.
That's what I was getting at for like how we were crafting something in the early days before we really had gone through like knowing your why, understanding what your core values are, hiring through those filters as decision-making metrics, right?
And I just want to say, as a result, now it's 15 years later, and last year we celebrated 4 of our employees have been with us for 10 years, right? Like either on the leadership team, as a coach, like what have you, at in various positions in
and
our
quite
company.
a few have made it even in the 5 to 8 year range.
Right. Which is super significant in our industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's a testament to you and the culture
Thank
that
you.
you've developed in this organization. And it's taken a long time, but it's been something that's been a focus of yours since day one.
Yeah. It costs more money and it costs more energy
Correct.
to build an organization that is focused on culture from the very beginning.
But the payoff is huge.
The payoff is huge, but it doesn't come for a long time, right? You get that payoff, turnover affects revenue generation, and you don't see the financial benefit of retention until you've gone through many cycles of other organizations around you having high turnover and you not having that high turnover. So you're paying a little bit more. You're listening a little bit more. You're trying to show up and be there for them as a person a little bit more outside of the employee role that they execute for you. And that looked like the president of our company grading term papers for college students, or going through editing them, right? Not grading, but editing them. And so we started providing
She probably
things.
graded them too.
She probably graded them too.
In
This is
her
a
head.
B- paper at best, Nancy. And so for us, it was like, let's build an organization where the further you advance, you get told the more layers you serve. And so advancing in the company puts you below people. Like, so you progress in your career, and now, oh, great, there's a whole layer here that's entry level that you now serve and try to make their job easier. But then there's levels below you that are making your job easier. And it keeps going all the way down to the leadership team, which currently consists of director of finance, director of operations, and our president integrator and myself, just the 4 of us. And so we're serving the most people in the organization. And we started that way in 2009. And then you go and you see your peers and your friends, and they're like, oh, I just got this brand new Porsche. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to keep my Civic on the road, right? So there are financial challenges to doing it the way we did it. And I want to be super clear about that. You're not going to have the cash because it takes money to retain people. You can't be paying everybody entry-level rates for 10 years. Those salaries have to grow, and it's going to cost you more money, but you're hoping that that you have the right people you're investing in, because then the revenue takes care of itself, right? And so for us, we were willing to sacrifice time early on so that we could get more time later on. We were willing to sacrifice income early on so that we could invest more in the people that we were taking along with us on this journey. And hopefully that would mean that people would leave for reasons like new opportunities, moving out of town, family change, situations change, but not because they couldn't reasonably pay the bills they were expecting to pay with their employment with you, right?
I'm hearing you use the word hope. You said hopefully, or you're hoping. So how do you ensure that you have the right people? And has that been your experience, that you've seen that happen? You've seen those occurrences?
I mean, I think at first you're just smoking a lot of hopium and you're hoping it works out. But after you start to use things like EOS and you start to document and create hiring filters and questions that you ask people when you're almost trying to talk them out of working for you, you're asking questions that lead you to a better understanding of their why and seeing if it matches with your why. And then very, very clearly articulating, these are the most important core principles of how we execute this organization. We call them core values. There are hundreds of values out there that are all wonderful. These are our 4. If you're aligned with these 4, this is not going to feel like work. This is going to feel like something you wake up enjoying to do, you love doing, and you're doing it with people you love. And that's the deliverable of EOS. The 5 deliverables to the business owner is doing what you love with people you love, making a massive impact and being compensated appropriately for that impact with time to pursue other passions. So when you start trying to find ways to deliver that to your staff, then you're actually putting in the reps, the exercises, mental exercises to create something that people will want to be a part of long term. And so for us, our core values help first, right? When I'm interviewing, during the interview, the first 15 minutes, I talk to them specifically about how to win an interview. And I tell them like, hey, I know you guys take classes on this in college. I'd love to take the first 15 minutes to talk through what we're looking for as interviewers and business owners. And I want to share some truths with you. And the main truth, the big one I share with them is that if you're a good candidate and you're a fit, as soon as the person interviewing you realizes that, you now have full control of the interview as the applicant. And if you know you're great, go into it believing that. Believe you control this interview. Yes, you're going to answer their questions and stuff, but come prepared with your own questions. Research the company online to determine what their footprint is online, what their value statements are online, and then come to the interview and ask questions around those value statements to see if who they say they are is who they actually are, right? Because you don't want to work at a place that says they're one thing, but they actually are something else. So if you ask a value-related question, like I give the example in the interview, I say, so if you come to Soccer Shots and you say like, yeah, I'm just like, I really want to be great at this job. What does pursuing excellence in a coaching career with you guys look like? Right away, I'm like, oh, pursue excellence, one of our core values. He speaks my language. She speaks my language, right? And so right away, I hear alignment in language. And then I'm going to answer you and I'm going to say, pursuing excellence, that's a great question. Honestly, let's keep it super simple at the start. Come prepared and come on time. You know, if you show up early for a class to coach these children and you haven't done the preparation, no one cares that you were early. You're just like butchering a class that you showed up early for. If you do tons of preparation and you show up late, nobody really cares that you did a lot of preparation. They just care that, why can't this guy show up on time? Why can't this girl show up on time? Why can't they respect my schedule, right? And so doing those two things is an easy, early way to pursue excellence. Thank you for asking. What a wonderful question. Like when that's part of the interview process, they can hear me have an answer about pursue excellence. If I just give this value, pursue excellence, we're never satisfied with good. They're like, okay, but how? Like, how do you never be satisfied with good? And so articulating it and documenting it helps you to filter through it, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, what was I willing to sacrifice? I was willing to sacrifice time. I was willing to sacrifice money. I was willing to sacrifice a lot of stuff for a time, right? There's a time and a season for everything. And for us, we felt like, okay, the grind, 5 years of grind. And 5 years is a very long time.
And why did you
It also
decide
feels
that it
kind of
would
short
be-
in hindsight,
but why would you decide that that's the time frame? Like what? And how
only
do you-
because of what we said earlier with the age of our son.
Okay. And how do you find it in yourself to trust the process that will be a time and that we will be successful and this will? Where does that come from?
I don't know if it's trusting the process. I think it's more like I'm willing to have this not work for 5 years. And so, we can get caught in a bad idea and read all the books that are like, just don't give up. Everyone else quits and be the one that makes it. Like, but if you're not fulfilling, if you're not serving a need or filling a hole or doing something that you can be there forever and it's not going to work, right? The 5 deliverables of EOS, making a massive impact and being compensated appropriately for that impact. You have to be making the right impact to be compensated financially for it. If you're making an impact that's not correlated to solving a problem for people, then they're not going to pay you for it, right? And so then you're not going to be able to pay your rent or your grocery bills or anything. So we were going through tough things. We're like, at one point our car couldn't get over 50 miles an hour or just start vibrating, right? It's like, okay, this sucks. Driving 50 miles an hour with everybody honking at you on a freeway here in Southern California. Or you speed up and you're just like, your arms are just shaking like this going down the highway. Or we always signed up on the meal train. So we would take food to people and help people who were going through something. One of our friends, they found a tumor in her brain and we were providing, we were making a meal for them one day. I remember this distinctly. And we didn't have enough ingredients to make the meal for them and make it for us. So theirs was the full version and ours was the beta.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I was making like crock pot chicken tacos.
Yeah.
And I doubled the recipe and made enough for their family and our family. But, I remember we had like $21 in our bank account and I had enough money to buy them the tortilla shells and the toppings and pay for the toll road to get it to their house on time.
And the sour cream.
The sour cream. I love me some sour cream. But I didn't have enough money to do that and pay for toppings for us.
And sour cream for us.
So I didn't get no sour cream that night. But we had a bowl of chicken.
But that was
We
aligned
ate,
with
but-
our, we will sacrifice
Right.
for this amount of time. And that was one of the things we're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah.
We're willing to show up for other people, to help first. What more can
Right.
I do? And to live out that value and do it in this specific way, trying to build a Soccer Shots organization for 5 years. And I think that us coming into it with that mentality is what helped us to win in this
Yeah,
really competitive environment.
You mentioned earlier that this environment is competitive. So tell me more about that. What are you talking about when you say that? What are you talking about when you say that?
So Southern California is a great place to live. And when you're located in a great place to live, weather-wise, access to a beach and great weather year-round, it draws other people. And the more and more people that are drawn in, entrepreneurs show up. And so you have just a lot of people out there hustling, trying to make it work. And so for us, we bought franchises, so we were limited to a certain population size. And so Soccer Shots was in its early years.
We have a territory.
We have a territory. So each territory is 500,000 people. And so we had to buy multiple territories to get all of Orange County. And that took us a process of getting those territories.
Reinvesting in ourselves.
Reinvesting, correct. And so for us, what was I talking about?
The challenge of this area.
Yeah, the challenge of the area. So I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like 400 preschools or whatever the number is, right? It's like, well, okay, there's 400 preschools in a really concentrated area. So enrollment per preschool is probably actually a bit lower than maybe in a different area where they might have one preschool in a specific area. We might have 5 in that area, same amount of people in this like 4 neighborhoods. There might be 5 preschools, and in a different part of the country, there's 1 preschool. So now there's 180 kid preschool, and we've got like 5 that are 30 to 50 kids. And so it's a lot harder to get a full class out of a 30 kid preschool and to keep coaches too, right? Because like now my coaches have to drive to 5 locations instead of driving to 1 and coaching 5 classes. They're going to 5 and coaching 1 in each class. So that's challenging. But also it's not just the preschools that are competing. We're an enrichment program. We're a value add onto a preschool. And so at every preschool we're in, there's 5 to 9 competing programs. So you have, instead of 180 kids in a preschool, we have 35. And instead of 1 or 2 enrichment programs like ours, after school or during school, little classes that happen on campus conveniently for the parents, so they don't have to take them anywhere after preschool to like a soccer practice. It just happens there during the day. There's like 5, 7, 9 competing programs going after 35 kids. And so we're like winning in every preschool. We have 6, 7 kids enrolled, right? And I'm looking around the country and other people are like, we might cut this one. We only have 12 kids signed up, and we like to get 5 consecutive classes out of stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we were in a much more challenging part of the country and a franchisor that had never spent time in a really challenging market. And so what was true and typical did not apply for us. And so, we actually formed an early reputation of not being able to sell and grow the business, even though I've landed, now we're at 350 preschools that we've landed and worked with in just Orange County, and we're actually only in about 95. It's because we've cut the rest because they just couldn't sustain it.
How many preschools do you think that Soccer Shots owner in other parts of the nation would have, like, how many preschools do they land typically?
My guess is that most of them are probably they have about 40 to 50 preschools.
Okay.
Some of the really ambitious ones might have closer to what we have, but much higher enrollment per child.
Right.
So we have to charge more. So
it's just not apples to apples.
No, the business is very different. The math is very different. The business is the same, but the math is very different.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. There are pros and cons to being part of a franchise system. I think for us, it was a lot of things came into play, like with us being happy in a franchise system and not feeling, I think sometimes entrepreneurs could feel maybe confined or like their hands are
it's
tied.
a fully furnished apartment.
Right.
Right. So that you open the door.
It's turnkey.
put the key in, you open the door, and it's like, oh, it's all furnished. As an entrepreneur, you want to furnish the apartment. You want an empty apartment, and you want to pick the couch. You want to pick the 75-inch TV, not the 50-inch TV.
Yeah.
You want to do all that, right? And so
to an extent, we were able to do that.
We were because we were
came in so early on. Yeah.
So that's the encouragement. Is that if you're looking at franchises and you're like, man, I do not follow the rules very well.
I don't fit in the mold.
Well, I don't follow the rules very well.
Yeah,
I want to like blaze my own path. You can do it in a franchise system and have a higher success rate because you have a community of people to bounce things off of that are trying the exact same thing. That's the huge benefit of a franchise system, is that it's often already a proven model, and you have peers that you can run stuff by who have already probably tried your idea and it worked or didn't work.
When I found it really interesting to be part of this community and this franchise system was during COVID, because we saw people in different parts of the country. Soccer Shots is operating in the US and Canada. Yeah. It's an international franchise. And we saw at that time owners who essentially owned the same business as us, living the same life as us, having a very different lived experience than us.
We didn't have to justify anymore. Like we go all the way, like the 10 years leading up to COVID hitting, we were like, we're in a different market. This is not, like your numbers don't translate what you're trying to get us to do. It does not work. And we're like, it's different. And they're like, everybody says it's different. Then COVID hits and, our pocket was hit extremely hard and for much longer than other parts of the country. There were franchises in summer of 2020 that were just blowing up in the summer of 2020, and we generated $0. I think it was like 200 or something. We got $200 total, right? With all the same fixed costs. We were trying to get out of all of our contracts and our leases. We're trying to buy our way out. But before we're paying all of this with no money coming in, and these other programs are having banner like seasons.
So a lot to overcome.
Yep.
A lot more sacrifices to make.
But we go back to the early days that, where we chose to accept a challenge. Right. And we chose to have a time frame on it. So when COVID hit, we felt like this is going to end. We're going to get back open again. Can we manage this challenge for this period of time?
Right. And I think we said that to each other many times. Like, we've been here before.
Yeah.
Not here, like really.
But we've been in the trenches of this doesn't work no matter how hard we work.
Right. So we can do it.
So we can do it.
We can get through this. And I think it really set us up going through those early days, making all those early sacrifices and having that kind of a mindset set us up for success going through that challenge. Yeah. And we know that, the next one's coming. It's not if, it's when, right? Like business, just that's how it goes. There's ebbs and flows. And we know that when the next thing comes, we're set up for success. We're resilient. We're capable. We can do this. We've been here before. We can do it again. Right.
And we also see opportunity when most people, threat and opportunity are the same coin, just two different sides of the coin. And that threat can be overwhelming, right?
Crippling.
But for us, we knew there was another side of the coin because we had lived in the threat of this not working for years, right? But we knew that there was opportunity on the other side of it that delivered what we wanted: time with our kids, living in a weather and in a location that we loved, near the beach, great sunsets, something that you and I both love. We knew that we could do it, and we knew that we had held on for years and survived, and we could do it again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes. There's been a lot of trial and error. We're not perfect. And so what would you say is your biggest business mistake over the last 15 years? If you could say, if there was one thing I wish I could warn people who are starting a new business or going into a business or, they're in business, what would be the biggest mistake that you made?
To not think about where you're going, where this is ending up when you're starting, right? So specifically, I think about contracts. The biggest mistake that we made, mostly on me though, was we had a partnership for the first years, and
not we. You had a business partner. When you originally bought your Soccer Shots business, you bought it with a partner.
Correct.
So when that partnership started, what did that look like? You guys just,
I knew we needed a contract. I had learned that from a previous experience where I got a handshake deal and I was promised something by someone who I trusted. And he didn't pay me what he said he was going to pay me. Over the course of a 3.5 month period, he paid me $24,000 less than he said he was going to, $23,000, something like that, which was significant. We were buying a house.
It was a huge setback for us at that time.
Yeah. We were buying a house. It like crippled us financially. And we had an agreement on what I was going to get paid, but then his business hadn't done as well as he had projected. And so he said he couldn't pay me that. I mean, he then went and bought a lakefront property right afterwards, but we didn't have a contract.
That wasn't a partnership though. That was
not
like,
a partnership.
He was technically your boss,
but
good fences make good neighbors, right?
Well, he had said we're partners a bunch, right?
Okay.
So I learned, don't call employees partners.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Because when it goes, my point back to him was like, hey, but if the business had done really well, were you going to pay me a bunch extra? And there's no answer. The answer was no. When the business doesn't do well, I'm in the economy of trading time for money. That's the economy I'm in as an employee, right? He was in the economy of trading results for money. And so he spoke to someone who was in a different economy, in a different structure, and expected me to accept his terms that he was in. But I wasn't an owner. I wasn't a partner. I had no upside. I just had time for money, right? And so I understood that, entrepreneurs work in a different economy. We're strictly based on results. We can work 25 hours a day and get paid $0. We can also work 1 hour in a day and get paid too much money for that 1 hour, right? Too much is based on how we redeem the money that we made,
sure.
not, whether we wasted it on ourselves or if we do something good with it. But my point being that you cannot speak to people working in a different economy and expect them to accept your economy that you're in when things don't go well.
Right.
And so a contract. So I've always had contracts with all of my employees. All of my leadership team members have contracts. And I read The Alliance, written by the guy who founded LinkedIn. It talks about, that lifetime employment is no longer a thing. And so can we form agreements that have terms like, hey, for this next year, this is our agreement. This is what you're going to do for my company over this next 12 months, these 3 things. These are the 3 things I'm going to add to your resume over these next 12 months. So very early on, figured some of that stuff out. Even before LinkedIn really come on my radar, we figured some of the stuff out. Making contracts, I'm a big believer that good fences make good neighbors, which you said earlier. I've said it many, many times. What it is in a business sense is the contract is that fence line, right? And so if we just have a conversation 1 year from now, 3, 5, 7, 12, 20 years from now, we're not going to remember that conversation the same. We're going to have used words specifically that meant something to us that might mean something different to the other person. And so looking over at the neighbor, I'm going to see the fence being in a slightly different spot than where they see the fence, right?
Absolutely.
And so one of the things I learned was that it's important to actually read through and talk through the contract and then say, what does this mean to you in your own words, totally separate from this document? What does this section mean to you? And then if they repeat back, and you can even record that and keep it somewhere.
And this is just something good in life, in communication. Like you and I do this too. Like, what did
you hear me say?
Yeah. What did...
this is what I heard you say.
Right. It's echoing, right? So that's a really important thing to do just to up-level your communication overall.
So it had not done that very well. So we had many things in the contract that meant different things.
They were gray. Yeah.
Yeah. To each of us. But the biggest mistake and biggest regret.
Do you think you were scared to address things?
No.
Or do you think you
no
just
idea. I had no idea.
So you guys just didn't know?
No, I was super proud that we had a contract.
Because I think sometimes people are scared to talk about
For
certain things, right?
I wasn't. This is a really close friend.
Business owners, brothers, there could be things where you're like, I don't want to address this. It might disrupt the
it might disrupt on day 1. Imagine what it's going to do on day 10 or year 10.
Yeah.
When that's going to blow up your friendship, right?
Right. I know that you're not wired that way, but there might be people out there who are.
So for me, it was not putting the end of the partnership into the partnership contract.
Okay.
And so if you put a formula in there, it's like, hey, if my desire to work full-time in this company while also owning the company changes, then this is what that looks like. I can exit different roles and responsibilities, and it just is there's an agreement in place and a formula and a strategy for making it happen.
This is how my salary changes. This is how our ownership distribution changes.
Little things like separating the compensation to partially having it tied to what you do in the company, and then partially tied to what you own of the company, right? So the ownership of the company, that percentage, unless you sell that never changes and goes away. It's a percentage of the profit, but you should also get paid for the role that you're doing, and that never crossed my mind. And so at one point, I'm the CEO of a large organization, and my partner is not, but we're getting paid the same amount, but I have way more responsibility and way more time being invested every day, every week, every month, every year, and no difference in compensation. That starts to impact how you feel about the other person's partnership, responsibility, role in the organization. You're like, what are we actually doing here?
Yeah.
Because one person can then start to arrive, they're achieving their personal goals of entrepreneurship, and you may not be in the same situation. Maybe you have more kids, maybe you live in a more expensive place, maybe you just have a different ambition for where the company can go. And so for me, we had not written that in there. And so the uncoupling process of ending a partnership took longer, was more painful, had no formula, was just feelings and frustration. And it became we will empty the accounts and try to make this happen, right? And so the biggest mistake I made was not putting a very simple formula. Hey, this is how we're going to evaluate the business. We're going to do evaluation based on either a multiplier of EBITDA or of gross revenue or like some calculable, right?
Because look, like everything comes to an end, right? Like you're going to exit your business one way or another.
Everyone dies, and your involvement in your business ends.
So whether you have a partner or not, or you're passing your business on to your children or not, or whatever it is, like if you are a business owner, you're going to exit your business. So like think through that from day one before you even start the business. From day negative, like how will you exit? What are the different ways that might happen, and write that into that contract, especially if you have a partner, because it's just going to come around and bite you if you don't.
And think through things like, what if you're two single guys who start a partnership, or two single women, or a single woman, a single man? You're just single and you start a partnership, and then one gets married. And then something happens in that marriage and it breaks down. Now, does that spouse get 25% of the company when they've had no involvement? They had nothing to do with it, but they didn't have anything in place. So we did have stuff in place that said, hey, this ownership partnership is between he and myself, between him and me. He and myself. I don't think that grammar's right.
That's okay.
But and then my dad was the grammar teacher. Then my side of it is split between me and my marriage partner, life partner, but you didn't have voting say or a place in the company. If something had happened to us, you would have gotten paid out a percentage of profit. But again, we didn't tie involvement to compensation. So it was just owner distribution split into, there you go. And he couldn't have brought in a partner through marriage, and then that dissolved, and then she now is like a full voting member of the organization. We did some things right? So we talked a little bit about that, but we didn't talk about exit strategy. We didn't talk about what happens when one of us runs out of steam and doesn't want to be involved, or just changes, pivots, priorities. Nothing wrong with it. And what you want from a business, it may be the same early on, but it doesn't mean that you're going to end up in the, if you both get exactly what you want, it doesn't mean that that's the same thing, the end game, right? So for me, the biggest mistake was not writing in a formula and a process for uncoupling the partnership. Because if I had had that in there from the very beginning, there would have been no tension, no resentment, no nothing. It would have been just a conversation like, hey, let's look at section 7 of our document. I want to start putting that in a process, because we would have put in things like, hey, it's a 14-month or it's an 18-month uncoupling process. Here's what it looks like. Here's the overlap of involvement in each other's and it would have all been done when everything was roses and sunshine, instead of emotional frustration, built up. Now we're ready to split, and now we're going to have that conversation. It's literally the worst time to have it. And so we had that conversation for over the course of a couple of years, and it was awful.
Yeah.
It was an awful, awful experience. You get into business with friends or with people that you seem very compatible. And I've heard so many times like, oh yeah, we were super compatible. We were very parallel. We just realized 4 years later that we were slightly off. And so it wasn't perfectly parallel. It was close enough to look exactly the same we started. But by year 5, 7, 8, 12, that drift had happened because our end goal wasn't actually exactly identical, the same. And I don't think it's possible for both of your end goals to be exactly the same. So what you have to do is document, articulate where we want this business to go, what we hope it could become, and then in the early stages, see, is there a way for both of us to achieve our goals, even if they're different? Well, if his was to pull out of operations and to still have ownership, but not do any work in the business, then it was simple. All he had to do was give up the salary that covered replacing that person there. Me too. Give up the salary replacing my job in the company. And I'll end with, this is a conversation because of that, like know better, do better, right? So because of that, we've had this conversation with our children many times, not connected to any specifics or any people, but we just say like, hey, when a family owns a business, we actually have 3 tables. We have the table that is belonging to the family, and that is yours by birthright or adoption, or someday married in. That is your right to have that chair at the table. There's ownership of the business, and that is the founder's decision. And so we've decided that you guys will each inherit equal shares ownership of this business, right? And so fair and same right there at that table. This table over here is the job you do at the company or don't do at the company. And that compensation is based only on the job you do, the role you do, the quality that you do, and how much it costs to replace you as the person doing that job, right? So we have one son that really wants to be a coach. That's a $30,000 a year job. It's a college job, right? Really wants to be a coach. So say the business is profiting $100,000. Each of the 5 kids gets 20 grand a year for ownership. And then that child gets another 30 grand for the job they do. Another one of our sons wants to be the CEO of the company. That, I'm just using random numbers, but that could be like $100,000 compensation, right? And so they're both getting 20,000. One's getting 30 for ownership, 20,000. One's getting 30 for the job he does, and the other one's 100 for the job he does. So one's getting a total of 50,000, and one's getting a total of 120,000, and that's fair. And so we've talked to them about that. You earn the seat at this table, the role in the company. The other ones, one is a birthright or an adoption rate, one is a gift, and then the other one, the last one you earn.
That's good.
So those are my takeaways, that things that we did wrong, and then how we have learned from it with our own family, so that we're setting them up to not have big family fights of co-ownership and all that. So we're trying to lay the foundation so that they don't make the mistakes we made.
We're trying. Yeah, and I think when it comes down to it, communication is key. And we've talked about this before, and we've talked about communication filters, and we've talked about, methods of communication. Even today, we talked about, echoing. And I think that open, honest communication and keeping that going is just going to serve us well. And so, yeah, it's a journey. You learn from your mistakes and you become better and stronger predictors and planners for the future. And we're blessed to be on this entrepreneurial journey together. And
you know why?
Yeah, why?
Better together.
It is better together. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. But thank you so much for all of your insights and, valuable takeaways. I think that the listeners today, no matter where they're at on their entrepreneurial journey, are going to be able to take something away from this episode. And yeah, we're going to keep talking about entrepreneurship and life and business and family and all of those great things. And hopefully we can provide more valuable experience shares for our listeners here on out. So thanks.
I love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.